No justified resentments. And this is a very difficult principle for many people to get, but one that I believe very strongly in. I was in a group one time of drug addicts and alcoholics. And I was one of the people that was a sponsor and leading this group. And the sign on the wall said, "There are no justified resentments in this group." And what I said to that group that night was, no matter what anybody says to you here, no matter what kind of anger comes directed towards you, no matter how much hate you may encounter showing up in your life, there are no justified resentments. Meaning that if you carry around resentment inside of you about anything or about anyone, and I'm talking about the person that you lent money to and hasn't paid you back, I'm talking about the person in your life that you feel was abusive in your life, I'm talking about the person who walked out on you and left you for somebody else, I'm talking about all of the things that you have justified in your heart and in your life that you have the right to be resentful about. And I'm suggesting to you that those resentments will always end up harming you and creating in you a sense of despair. I've often said that no one ever dies from a snake bite. The snake bite will never kill you. You cannot be unbitten. Once you're bitten, you're bitten. But it's the venom that continues to pour through your system after the bite that will end up destroying you.
We used to be pioneers. That's how the country was settled. And we stopped pioneering new things. We stay where it's comfortable. We play where it's safe. We don't really get out into the wild of the possibilities. We stay in the confined cage of that is tangible and touchable, 9 to 5, and that's it. But we need more creativity, and we need to follow our instincts. Now, without that, you may make some money, but you won't find fulfillment.
I'll never forget a recent experience. Doing my business on Wall Street, getting on the train to come back to Midtown, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Normally, there's a lull. This train should be empty. But on this day, the train was full. Full of people, all in business suits. A guy recognizes me, comes over and says, "Hey, are you Chris Gardner?" We started talking. Turns out, I'm in a car with the first wave of the 55,000 people who had just been laid off by Citibank. And I noticed something. Everyone's holding a box. You've seen the boxes, you've seen them on television. They've got their house plant, their coffee mug, the pictures of their kids. And they're all going home. They're all going home to tell their wife, their husband, their children, and the landlord they don't have a job. I began to share with this young guy that, well, you know what? Yeah, you lost your job, but you haven't lost your skills, your talent, or your expertise. What we've got to do now is create opportunities where the skill, talent, and expertise can be transferable. Creating an opportunity and looking for a job are two different things. This could be prime time for pushing your button, rather, finding your button. What do I mean by that? Prime time to find that one thing that you love to do so much, you would get up in the morning and do it free. Prime time to find that one thing that the sun cannot come up soon enough in the morning because you want to go do your thing. This could be that time in your life.
In my mind, as I think about this idea of getting what you really want and being able to attract it into your life, what we have to look at is basically the obstacles that we have conditioned ourselves. And you notice I say that we have conditioned ourselves, because I have never believed that we need to be putting the responsibility on someone else. If you're conditioned, it's because you have allowed yourself to become that. And if we've conditioned ourselves to believe certain kinds of things, and one of the things that we kind of believe and hang on to and live with is this whole idea that all of the things that happened to me in my past are what are keeping me from doing what I'd like to do today. So we hang on to these things and we fill ourselves with blame. We say, I'm the middle child. I'm the youngest child. I'm the oldest child. I'm an only child. Any one of those is a great excuse. If you're the youngest child, you can say, well, how could I be making decisions for myself and be a fully functioning person today when I always had somebody else telling me what to do my whole life? How could I think for myself? If you're the oldest child, you can simply say to yourself, well, how could I be expected to think for myself? I always had to think for somebody else. I was always doing it for somebody else. And that leaves the middle child, the classic identity crisis. Oh, poor me. My mother didn't even know my name. She was always calling me by this one's name or that one's name. So I don't know where I fit in. So that takes care of everybody except the only child. And of course, the only child, well, your parents looked at you and said, we won't be doing that again. Huh? You have to live with that, I don't. Huh? So everybody with their birth order, or with their mother liked their sister better, or that we had enough, or we didn't have enough, or we had too much, or we lived in the north, we lived in the south, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I've got too much hair, I don't have enough hair, it's falling out, it's not falling out, whatever it is, we all have these excuses. And I call all of these things that we hang on to and use to keep ourselves from reaching these higher places in our lives, the wake. I call it the wake. And the wake comes from a story that I heard Alan Watts tell one time, and it was a very powerful story. He said, your life is like a boat, and it's heading up the river at, say, 40 knots. Right? And as it's going, you are somehow able to metaphorically stand on the stern, the back of the boat, and look down into the water. Now there goes your life in this direction, and you're standing here and you're looking down into the water. And you ask yourself these three questions. The first question, what is the wake? What is it? What is this thing that you see? And the answer, the wake is the trail that is left behind. That's what it is. Nothing more, nothing less. It's the trail that is left behind. Second question to ask yourself in this little metaphor, what's driving the boat? What's making this thing go in this direction? The answer, the present moment energy that's being generated by the engine, and nothing more. That's the only thing that's making the boat go in this direction. And in this little scene, this means it's the present moment thoughts that I have and how I am using them that is making my life go in this direction, and nothing more. Because the third question is the most important and powerful question. And ever since I heard it, I've always thought about this whenever I have a tendency to look back here and blame something. Is it possible for the wake to drive the boat? That is, can a trail that is left behind make a boat go in this direction? And of course the answer to that is no. It can't. It's just a trail that is left behind. And in that trail, there are an enormous number of things, and every one of us has a wake. And we have a whole lot of stuff in it. And one of the problems that we have is that we have a tendency to look at the wake and all of the stuff that's in it to explain why it is my life isn't working the way I would like it to work. And who better to quote than Thoreau right here in Concord when he talked about some of us hear a different drummer and we must march to the music that we hear. But all of you, everybody watching, everybody here in this beautiful parish, all of you have some music playing. And all of you have a heroic mission. There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it. And too many of us are afraid to listen to that music and march to it. You out there, I know you have a book you wanted to write. I know there's a composition you wanted to compose. I know there's a song you want to sing someplace. Maybe you want to raise horses out in Montana. Or maybe you want to open up an ice cream shop on Cape Cod. Who knows what it may be? Maybe you just want to travel and see the world. Maybe you want to go into a relationship with someone but you've been afraid to, but your heart says it's the right thing to do. All of us feel something. And in Leo Tolstoy's famous novel, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, he asks this question that would be terrifying to me. He says, as he has his accountant from Moscow lying on his deathbed, contemplating the horror of this question, what if my whole life has been wrong? I've known what my music is. It's playing right now. As I stand here in front of you with these cameras and in this place, and as I sit down and write my books and tell the world what I know are my truths, I feel always completely on purpose and fulfilled. And no time will I ever come to the end of my life and say, what if my whole life has been wrong? Whoever you are, whatever that music is, however distant it may sound, however strange, however weird others may interpret it to be, don't get to the end of your life and know that you're going to leave and not have it played yet. Don't die with your music still in you.
It's Jocko Willink, you mentioned, retired Navy SEAL commander, used to be in charge of all West Coast training for the SEAL teams, which is intense. Highly, highly decorated. Whether it's Jocko saying discipline equals freedom, or you look at, say, some of the writers or musicians or directors or others in the book, across pretty much all of them, you find that they find freedom in constraints. So what does that mean? Sounds kind of weird. Also sounds very, it sounds like an oxymoron, right? And what I mean by that is all of these people have routines. They have set recipes that they repeat on a daily and weekly basis so that they are not making a lot of extraneous decisions about mundane things. And they also recognize that we all have our lesser selves, our impulses. I love chocolate croissants. If I left my entire schedule to whim, I would just eat chocolate croissants all day long. I love them. They're incredible. And I still do have them once a week. I have my cheat day and I'm allowed to do what I want. So I let my monkey mind and my lesser self just go nuts. But these people all have typically, these are folks we might be inclined to think of as superheroes. And maybe Jocko's a superhero. But the vast majority have one or two strengths. They might not even be the best in the world, but one or two strengths they combine in a really unique way. And they build habits around those strengths. And then they have 1,000 other weaknesses. But the habits and routines are what help them from going off the rails. And this is really encouraging. This should be really encouraging because the people we see on magazine covers that we might idolize and feel we could never possibly emulate because they have it all figured out, they have no insecurities, they wake up every morning and with a mental karate chop, they just master the day. That's not how it works. I know these people, almost everyone in this book, certainly on the podcast, I've become friends with hundreds of these people. Not true. They have tons of, not everyone, I don't want to speak for everyone, but tons of neuroses, tons of terrible self-defeating habits. And the safety net they create is habits and routines. That's why Jocko, in part, says discipline equals freedom. Okay, so you have trouble waking up in the morning? No problem. You want to stage, this is something that Jocko does, takes his clothing, prepares, gets his sort of coffee ready to brew, clothing on the floor for the workout, right next to his bed, prepared the night before, so there are no decisions, there are no opportunities to make mistakes between him opening his eyes and Jocko working out. And you find this across everybody.
This was something that Portia Nelson, who I knew, who passed away a few years back, 10 years back now, she lived up in Seattle, and she had, she was at a seminar, and they were asked to write the autobiography of their life in five verses, 5 chapters. So, and they gave them only like cards this size. Actually, they were smaller than this. They were 3x5 cards. So write out chapter 1 of your life and just go to where you are today. And I remember doing this very same thing, but what she wrote was so brilliant that I asked her daughter if we could put it on public television, which I did on the most recent show, and we made a contribution to Portia's work. So this is what she wrote down in the chapter 5 of her life. Chapter 1, she said, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault, and it takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time for me to get out. Chapter 3 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am, and it is my own fault, and I get out immediately. Chapter 4 of my life. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5 of my life. Finally, I walk down another street. Isn't that great?
When people ask me, like, what example should I look to? They're like, what company should I? I'm like, here's an organization with a vision, a cause. It was founded with a cause. It's an entrepreneurial venture. America is an experiment. It's an entrepreneurial venture where a bunch of people got together and decided we needed to start our own country. Because there were certain obstacles that were getting in the way of a vision that we had of a better kind of country, better kind of company, right? And they stated it right out of the beginning. All men are created equal, endowed with these unalienable rights, amongst which include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it's not just a competitive statement, like to be the best, to be the most respected. That's not what it was. And I'm amazed how many companies start their visions or missions with that terribly egocentric language. It was an ideal. And the amazing thing is we've been good at it and bad at it in our history, but it's endured for 240 plus years because we fundamentally believe that we are at our best when we're pursuing that. But it is an ideal. We will never actually achieve all people are equal, but we will die trying. And that's the point. And it's the same for a company, which is true vision inside a company, is something that has nothing to do with your product. It is an ideal to which you will attempt to build and advance that ideal through your company with your product. You'll never achieve the ideal, but you'll die trying, and this is what gives our work meaning. This is what gives our lives purpose, right? The difference between vision and a goal is the finish line. A goal is 26.2 miles. You can simply count the metrics and know when you've completed your goal. A vision is having a crystal clear sense of what the finish line looks like, but no idea of how far away it is. Wow. And the reality is you will spend your entire life never actually crossing the finish line, but the joy that every marathon you complete, you feel like you're getting closer. Every milestone that you accomplish makes you feel like you're getting closer and closer to the ideal, and this is what gives our life and our work meaning.
No one likes being told what to do. And this isn't just children, this is all of us. One of my favorite songs is a song from when I was back in high school. Oh, give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above. Boy, you know it. Don't fence me in. Don't restrict me. Don't put boundaries on me. Don't tell me what I can do and what I can't do. Don't tell me how to be there. Don't tell me what to wear, what to think. Don't tell me how to do yoga. Don't tell me, I don't want to be told. This is the soul speaking, always. The soul is constantly having a desire to expand and grow. And anything or anyone that comes into your life that attempts to do that, you will find yourself fighting it and reaching back.
Most people have goals in life. And we've been brought to think you got to be goal-oriented. That's the first mistake. Yes, you need goals, but there's something far beyond goals, which is what all successful people have, and that's a vision. It's a vision for the future. See, here's it is. You see things as they are, but not worse than they are.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
They say, oh, it's so terrible. They tell themselves this wild story about why they can't take action. And in truth, the story they tell themselves is exactly what holds them back from being successful.
Agreed.
It's that bullshit story that stops them from acting. And they're, oh, there's so much, the economy, and they play the blame game, they complain, they justify, and it stops them from moving forward. So see things as they are, not worse than they are.
Yep.
And then see them better than they are.
Yep.
And make them that way. Look at a Gandhi. Right? He survived hunger strikes and united a country, not because he had a goal for a free India, he had a vision of a free India. Nelson Mandela, all those years in jail, a vision.
Yeah.
Richard Branson, who's a friend of mine, who I know, he sponsors me, my speaking tour. He's like a visionary. Bill Gates, they're all visionaries. And the best example, considering we're in Hollywood, is a guy like James Cameron. Now, here's the trap. James Cameron is probably the greatest visionary of all time in filmmaking. Do you agree?
Yeah,
he was interviewed on Diane Sawyer, and they asked him a question of, what do you owe your success to? And what he said was this: I set really, really high goals. So even if I fall short, I'm still doing great. And people thought that was pretty profound, and I actually believe in that too. It's not true though. See, what's happening is this: James Cameron is not a goal setter, he's a visionary. He just doesn't realize because he's running unconscious strategy himself. If I said that James Cameron was it really just the goals, or do you have a vision for Avatar? He'd say, oh, of course I will. And he'd get all excited and he'd tell you how nothing was going to stop him from making this movie. The fact that it took 10 years and ran $200 million over budget and he put money in himself, that's not what goal setters do. Goal setters will set a goal, gets tough, and they abandon it. And I can't overemphasize that distinction. That's